comics.
Because they have no bones.
Don't forget to stay for the after show.
After show.
The after show.
It certainly is.
It is.
Here we are. Yeah, I'm really excited that we were able to rate something higher this time. I'm actually really excited that we fell on the same number rating. And it's funny to me that we liked different villains, but we ended up at the same score.
Yeah,
it's
for
like,
different reasons. But
right. It's like that meme where you see the kid has like the right answer, but they use like the wrong formula to get there, and they're like, I don't know how you did it, but somehow you got the right answer.
Back to formula.
We got to throw in some Spiderman references.
Spider-Man. Okay, we're here to talk about that.
I haven't seen No Way Home yet, so no spoilers. No spoilers in the comments. No spoilers in this after show, please.
See it.
I will be seeing it on next Thursday. Is the plan. We've bought tickets, so that's when it's happening. And I'm sorry that the wait's going to be so long. If my sister wasn't insisting on rewatching all of the previous Spider-Man movies first, we would already be going, but it just didn't work out. So she really wants that refresher, particularly on Far From Home, before we go into this one. So yeah. Sure. Yeah, but I'm excited that we finally got something that was out of the threes, because we have been a little bit down on stuff for a while. And I really think that, especially what you were saying towards the end about Batman, it really highlighted to me why we ended up with a 3 out of 5 on Last Night on Earth, because it just feels like Gail Simone, even with the few panels she has of Batman, understands that character better than Scott Snyder does, maybe. And I know that was a dystopian future, and I know it was an alternate take, and Scott Snyder's done plenty of great work, but this was just so much more grounded, and the characters felt more like real people.
Yeah, and like I said with that one before, it was just the presentation in the first part, which didn't seem to add or contribute and just seemed weird, and it got off to a strange start to where it was like very jarring. Whereas this one, it's like you start off with Batgirl, and she has this monologue about how she's back at it, and she's out of the wheelchair, and like it takes you through the journey in a way that lets you know what's happening. It gives you enough information that you can track where she's coming from and what's going on. So I really liked that it gave you enough, but it didn't spend so much time rehashing what had happened. Although each issue, it did seem to rehash the previous issue and give you like a page synopsis of what happened last time. And I know I've seen this before because, if you're getting monthly issues, you're trying to remember, okay, what happened a month ago, especially if you're reading other things. But
that's very much an older comic book trope, though.
Yeah.
That made it feel dated. Yeah. Yeah, that made the book feel dated, which even in 2011, I don't think that was super common. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe if I go back and read some other New 52 trades, I'll see that happening in a lot of those issues. But yeah, that first page synopsis of the previous issue thing. I mean, I remember reading that a lot in the 90s, and certainly if they had a multi-part story back in like the Stan Lee era, they would definitely be giving you a synopsis on the first page.
Yeah, it just seemed really weird, and I don't know. Were you reading the trade, or were you reading?
Yeah, I was reading the trade, so I was going, directly from one issue to another.
Did it have that in the trade as well?
Yeah, those were still there. So yeah, it was odd because what will very often happen with that as well is that the dialogue will not match up one for one.
Yeah.
And so
it's
like you're seeing the same events play out slightly differently, and then you get into the continuation of the story, which is kind of an odd thing.
The ones that are the worst are when it's like a retelling of the story, and so the previous story had this like really major cliffhanger, but then the
Yeah.
way that they retell it is slightly different, so the cliffhanger doesn't seem like as big of a deal, or they change something to where the cliffhanger resolves a way that it couldn't have if you took the original synopsis. And I don't know if that's more in like animation or film or something, but I remember seeing that before where it's like,
Dragon Ball Z does that. So
oh yeah, revisionist
the
history.
Dragon Ball Z is pretty sick with that idea. I think actually,
Yeah.
but
It's like, that's not the cliffhanger you gave me. Come on. I feel
right,
like I've been
right.
gypped here.
It's like the planet is 2 seconds from being destroyed, but then you get to the next episode and the big death ball is like 3 miles away instead of being right next to the planet, and you're like, wait, what happened? How did
Hmm.
how did we get here? We're not
And
in as
now they
much
have plenty of
danger as we were
time.
before. Yeah, yeah. So I don't know. That's one of those weird comic book tropes. It was something I noticed, but I didn't. I think I was just enjoying kind of revisiting this story enough that it didn't take me out of it too much. But I definitely did notice. Um, the main thing in our notes that we didn't get to, I mean, unless there was something else you wanted to say on that,
No.
um, was talking about feminism in literature and specifically the question of whether or not this is feminist literature. I know that Gail Simone definitely would consider herself a feminist, but I don't think that it is, and forgive me for saying this, I don't think she's as heavy handed with it as some other writers. And really, the one that comes to mind for me is Kelly Sue DeConnick. Not because of her Captain Marvel work, but because of her work on a series called Bitch Planet that I've read. It's very, very overt and heavy handed there. And to the point that there are no um, male characters with redeeming qualities, really. And while I get it, because that's from a male perspective, which is where I'm coming from. Me saying like, oh, there's nobody in that story for me to relate to. I'm sure plenty of women can say that about like 90% of stories that come out, right? So
Yeah.
there needs to be something out there that's just for them, you know, that's not just going to pander to whatever I'm looking for in a story. But at the same time, I think this story with Batgirl was so balanced in she's just a good character. It doesn't matter that she's a woman. And that to me is almost a better version of that than having her say things like, well, a man couldn't do it this way, or like calling attention to it. I think that the feminism in this is subtle, but I do think that it's there. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so like it being heavy-handed, I totally what you mean,
Yeah.
because it's like in Avengers Endgame where they have this gratuitous shot of all the female superheroes. Like I get it that you're trying to highlight them and be like, look, we have all these female superheroes, but at the same
Right.
time, like they're in the middle of a major fight for the universe and they're assembling the army, and what all the women are like, hey, let's stand together and look pretty together. Like, no,
Yeah. It feels
come
like
on.
pandering.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but Simone's writing, the research that I did, her writing's all about equality. So if a man can be a
Mm-hmm.
hero, he can sacrifice himself for a noble cause. He can be flirty, he can be flawed. Why can't female superheroes be the same way? And I
Right.
think that's, what you're saying is like, just give me a good character, whether it's male or female, give me a good character, but
Yeah.
don't give me a female version of a male character. Like, give me a female character. So don't make Batgirl be Batman, except she just has girl in her title and she's female, and then that's it. Otherwise,
Right.
she's exactly like him. No, give me a different character. And, Nightwing's a different character. He's not
Mm-hmm.
Bruce Wayne. So Batgirl, Barbara Gordon, needs to be a different character. And I think they did that in this without overcompensating to the point where she's like, I don't need no man, get away from me. It's like she has these almost tender moments with Batman, not because again he's a man, but because he's her mentor. Like he's the one that taught her how to fight.
Right.
And he was almost not like a father figure to her because, Batman's not really a father figure, but just somebody who took her under his wing and really taught her things about fighting and being independent and that sort of thing. And probably more so than her father, her real father would, because he'd probably want to go on the side of protecting her more and be like, well, I'm the cop and I'll be out there and I'll keep you safe. So don't worry about all that. You know, like,
Right.
not because she's female, but because she's his daughter. So that's usually the tendency. And there's even this one line of dialogue where in a flashback, Batman came to visit her in the hospital when she was paralyzed. And she was going through all this stuff about he's going to tell me that, you know, I should have been better. I was a failure. I should have, you know, taken the training and done something better with it. But all he did was hold her hand and be supportive without really saying any words. And
Right.
so during the story, Batgirl saves Bruce Wayne from the hypnotized limo driver, and Bruce whispers in her ear, "You were always meant to be Batgirl, Barbara." And that was such a cool, like, sweet moment of like, I got my mentor's approval. It seemed maybe a little too touchy feely for Bruce Wayne, but that's kind of how he was portrayed in the story anyway.
Yeah.
But at the
Yeah.
same time, like, if this was something that was like heavy handed feminism, I mean, she doesn't need a man's approval. Like, who cares
No.
what you think, Bruce Wayne? Like, whatever. I do my own thing regardless of what you say. But it wasn't that way. That's not how it was taken.
No. No, it was very much rooted in the relationship that they have as characters. And
Right.
and so I don't think that that takes anything away from Barbara to have him give his approval. It's not that she needs it, but
Correct.
getting it is still something that feels good, you know.
Well, and it's a tightrope you walk of, you know, you got to make sure that you don't depend on men for your story, but at the same time, if it's a story, it has to have men in it in some regard. And, you know, if you have a father figure or a mentor or somebody, like, she's going to want his approval just because that's how any person would be with their mentor. Like, I want to make you proud because you've trained me and I feel like I'm doing such a great job that I want to see you proud of me. Like, that's just
Right.
normal.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
I think that's just a normal human desire. Yeah, I kind of go back and forth on that moment with you as well because I don't know if that feels out of character for Bruce. I think that it makes more sense earlier when Nightwing says something like, "Look, we love you, and we're just trying to make sure you're okay." But Bruce would never say that. That to me rings a little bit truer for Bruce Wayne. He's not really somebody that wears his heart on his sleeve
right.
for sure. So, but it was such a good moment, and then she comes out of it with the wow, I feel like I could fight lions, and then she goes and takes down Gretel after that, and it really was just a good story beat. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just the more I think about this, I'm really just pleased with how it came out, and one of the reasons I wanted to pick this story in this run specifically is because I really did feel like, and I mentioned this on the last after show, but I just felt like we've somehow been hitting stories where there are not empowered female characters. And I really do want listeners out there to know that, yes, that exists in comics. Yes, it's a thing in comics. We're getting better at it. I mean, obviously, this is a story from 2011. So, I can only assume that we're getting better as we move along. But yeah, I wanted some representation there because that is something you can find in comic books. It's just that it's been such a male dominated industry for so many years that I think it's taken a while for that needle to move a little bit.
Yeah, it's taken a long while. And, you know, even
Mm-hmm.
now there's still struggles of like, well, we have this female character, so we need a female to write it. So you're a woman,
Right.
here, you can write this character. Like, well, no, again, it's not about what your gender is. It's about like, what kind of writer are you? What kind of stories do you like? And is this a character that's going to fit that? Or is it going to be not a good match? And I think the industry even still probably has some work to do. Again, citing Avengers Endgame, like, don't pander, don't overcompensate, just be normal.
Right.
What? And I
Exactly.
use that term loosely, of course, but you know, just they're people, so treat them like people. Don't treat
Yeah.
them one way or another because of their gender. They're people.
Yeah. I would totally agree with that statement. I think that's very well put. And I mean I think that some of those issues are maybe more pronounced with certain characters. Carol Danvers, for instance, is a very headstrong character. And so that's going to play out in the way that she interacts with people in her comics. Wonder Woman, at DC, she comes from an island where there's only women. I mean, so that's going to alter the nature of her stories. But I think that and Wonder Woman, actually a character that started out with pretty sexist writing. If I'm honest, I mean, it was kind of like one foot in wanting to appeal to a female readership, but also one foot in wanting to draw cheesecake. I feel like in the original inception of the character, because William Moulton Marston, the guy that created Wonder Woman, was definitely a ladies' man. To put it mildly, he had a very interesting relationship with women. So, but I do think that even those characters, like Carol Danvers was somebody for a while that had a string of male writers that had just not written good stories about her, and we finally had somebody come along, and that was Kelly Sue DeConnick, that was like, what, we're gonna write this ship, and we're gonna turn her in a direction where she feels more like a real person and more empowered. And so I think that shows that you can really take any character and you can do that with them if you're creative enough, if you're a good enough writer. And it's just really satisfying to see. So
Another interesting thing that happened in this story, and it was like one, maybe two panels, is Detective, what was it, McKenna? She's taken off the case and given time to recover, which is interesting because Gordon's just like adamant that like your partner was just killed, you need to take some time off, go. But Batgirl, but I need to stop this guy, but all these things. No, we're gonna handle it. You go, take some time off. He was very
yeah,
very forceful and strong about that. I guess because he really cares about the people that are under him.
right.
But anyway, so he calls her up because he's ready for her to come back because now, oh, what is it? There's something, Batgirl's back and he wants her to go after her or something like that. I don't know. But
Yeah,
he makes a phone call to her and she picks up the phone and she's curling dumbbells. And then you see in the background of, I think, her living room, she's got like a weight rack and like all kinds of stuff. And she's
yeah.
like pumping iron. And so that was kind of interesting. And I'm like, obviously, lifting weights isn't something that only men do because my wife lifts weights. So
Sure.
it's totally fine and normal. And it does not make you looking like a grotesque man if a woman lifts weights. That's a myth. But it was just interesting to see like, well, that's how she was spending her time and that's how she was blowing off steam was by weightlifting. And that seemed
Right.
totally normal to me because my wife goes crazy if she doesn't get to go lift weights for an extended period of time. So it's
Yeah.
just little things like that were neat to see in this story. It was only two panels, but it was kind of like gave her a little more
Mhm.
dimension, I think,
I
as a
totally
character.
forgot about Detective McKenna's subplot about her partner being murdered and then her wanting to catch Batgirl. Did I actually have a that brings me to a question that I had that we didn't really get to answer, which is how much do you think, and this is switching gears a little bit, so I apologize, but how much do you think Commissioner Gordon knows? Do you think he knows that Barbara is Batgirl? Because there's one panel in particular where Detective McKenna says Batgirl's back, and he has this look of just complete and utter shock on his face. Like, and that made me think like, oh, he knows. But then later he's got McKenna chasing her down. So I almost wonder. I don't know. I thought that was a little unclear in the story, but I just wondered what you thought. Like,
I
yeah.
don't know that I got enough from the story to know, and he did seem a little bit robotic. I mean, we didn't really get a whole lot of him doing anything exciting. I mean, he's not as robotic as like saying I'm fine and then reading his newspaper because he's a replicant, created by Hardak, but he did seem a little
Hard
stiff
act.
and not really featured in the story. So I don't know. And
Yeah,
it's
he
hard for
wasn't
me.
he wasn't present a whole lot except at the beginning when Barbara
Yeah.
was living with him for a short while, and he was like, I heard you were having nightmares and that kind of that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's hard for me too because having read way more Spider Gwen, like her father's the chief of police, and
Oh
he
yeah.
and all these things that happen. I'm trying not to mix the two together. I mean, they're different characters, so it's not like you
Sure.
confuse one for the other, but that's what I'm more familiar with, so I'm trying not to project that into the story.
Well, there is a Zero issue of Batgirl where I believe they show one of the first times that she goes into action, and it's at the police station. And I think both Commissioner Gordon and her little brother James Jr. are involved in that story. I don't want to spoil it if you read it, but I know that Commissioner Gordon does show up later in some of her other stories. For whatever reason, they did all the origin issues like about 8 or 9 issues in to the series during New 52. So they'll have like issue 1 through 8, and then there's issue 0, and then issue 9 will come or
Weird.
whatever. I'm not sure why, but yeah, I know that he almost has to be a supporting character for her. It's interesting because on the animated series, I don't know. I would almost say that Commissioner Gordon knows on the animated series. I feel like he knows, but he's just not going to acknowledge it out loud. But I think it's a lot more ambiguous here in the book, and I think you're right. I don't think they really give you enough to really be able to parse out what he thinks.
Yeah. I think isn't there a like super recent story where I thought I remember reading that he's like, "Oh yeah, I knew the whole time that you were Oracle and you were Batgirl and
Right.
all this stuff."
I don't know. All I'm thinking of is Over the Edge on Batman the Animated Series, which is that great episode where she gets gassed by the Scarecrow, and then she dreams that her father finds out, and he's like hunting Batman and making them all take their cowls off, and then she wakes up and she's like gonna tell her father, and he's like, "Oh, honey, you don't have to justify any of your decisions with me. Whatever your new job is, you can just go do it, and you're an adult." And that moment to me was always kind of like wink, wink. Yeah, he knows, because the only other way to take what she was saying to him was that she basically goes like, "Dad, I've got a new job," and he like interrupts her before she says what it is, and you either could have, like, from his perspective, either she's Batgirl or she's trying to tell him that she's a prostitute. Like, so hopefully she's Batgirl.
Right?
But because it was so vague that I was like, oh wow, that could have really been taken wrong. But yeah, I don't know. I think he knows in the animated series. I don't know. I can't think of an example besides that episode though where they really addressed it.
So I did a little bit of Googling and I found The Joker #2 by James Tinian.
Oh, he has written a lot of everything.
So I guess this could be a potential spoiler for those that haven't read it. I haven't read it. I'm just relying on Google here at this point.
This is like
But
the current Joker series.
yeah,
Okay.
this was April 2021. Says that The Joker #2, James Gordon, made a startling revelation to Batman and Oracle, proving that he knows and has known that his daughter Barbara is part of the Bat family.
Wow, that makes sense to me. Honestly, I think at a certain point you've got to be like, either Jim Gordon is incredibly stupid or he's known and he's just not
Yeah.
admitting it, because I mean,
And what that would
there's
mean
always
for
kind of like
him.
that wink wink thing where like he runs into Bruce and he's like, "Oh, Bruce, what are you doing here?" That kind of thing
Yeah.
always seems to play out too. So I don't know.
Well, he wouldn't want to purposefully put his daughter in harm's way. I mean,
No.
he could reconcile it and just be like, "Well, this is what she's chosen, and let's hope that she's good enough to escape. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to bring her in, and I will put her in jail if that's what it comes to. That kind of thing. Like maybe it's one of those where it's like, I'm not gonna give this too much thought because this is how it is. So
Right.
rather than confront her about it, because obviously if she wanted his approval, she would have asked, and she didn't.
Um, I'm sorry, I just got distracted because my girlfriend just texted me and told me that she bought me a new TV. So I'm really excited
Nice.
right now. Yeah, I guess I have a 4K TV now.
That's
They
awesome.
were marked
Congratulations.
down at Kroger, and she was just like, "I just bought it." So and she doesn't like her TV either, so she bought herself one as well. I'm
Oh,
like,
nice.
oh my gosh.
Upgrades.
So yeah, I'm really excited. You'd obviously cut this out of the after show, but I mean, if you want to, but yeah, I wasn't listening for that last couple sentences because
No, that's okay.
got that message and I was like, oh my gosh. So yeah, I think we've covered most of it. Really, the stuff that I had wanted to talk about really in the body was the feminist theme and how well that came across, and I think it's very good read from that angle. Again, I'm not a woman, so maybe I'm not as qualified to judge that, but I think this is a very good story, well told, viewing it through that lens. And the other thing I had wanted to talk about was just kind of, more of Batman's portrayal. So yeah, I think
Well, if there are any lady listeners out there, please give us a message on Instagram, send us a tweet, or send Twitter a tweet, I guess. And sorry, that wasn't very hip of me.
A twit?
You twit. No,
send us a twit.
Yeah.
Twit us.
Tweet at us on Twitter. And leave us your comments. Let us know what you think. If it's completely different, if we're way off, if we don't know the first thing about feminism, please tell us.
That's
because
right.
we would like to know.
Yeah, I really would like to get some feedback on that because I think it's a good conversation to have. And honestly, you can't. The only perspective that I can look at things from is my own until somebody else comes in with another one. So that's an area especially where another perspective would be very valuable. So but for my part, I would recommend this story, and I think based on your score you probably would too. So yeah.
All right, well, this has been another after show. Thanks for listening, and we'll get you later.
Get you later.
Comic books,
Comic books.
comics, comic book podcasts, comic books.